I saw this UK regulator preparing a framework for tokenized gold. And for me, when I saw this, I thought, okay, this fits perfectly into the entire hash portion of what we've been talking about. Push towards stablecoin dollar on the US's front. What does the UK have? In my mind, it would be something like this. But I'm curious, Matt, what your take is on this headline.
All right, so we don't have anything here, but we know probably the biggest player right now in tokenized gold is Tether, right? And so the status of that product, I think it's still pending, or there's a light launch. You also have HSBC launched in Hong Kong for its clients there, a tokenized gold
Right.
product. And I mean, there's been I don't know the exact numbers, but it's volume measured in at least tens or a couple of 100 billion, like that order of magnitude for adoption within Hong Kong specifically. And then you have on top of that, Vince Lanci mentioned this on the podcast episode, the last conversation Tom Luongo, Vince, and I did on Tommy's podcast probably a week or two ago. Hong Kong moving, vault gold, or moving to vault gold for settlement, trading, all of that.
So to get more hubs for that
For,
across that
for
region, yeah.
for international trade, right, and
Right.
cross-border settlement. And so what you're seeing here is the UK's effort to do that. And now this is all rumor, but their FCA, their Financial Conduct Authority, their regulator, similar to the SEC in the United States. Basically, this Financial Times article was saying, well, there's probably some sort of regulatory rules coming in the next few months. That's in the bottom highlighted quote there. And so what this is you have vault gold. So think about gold bars held at the LBMA. Obviously, there's developments there, but this would be kind of think about the entire cross-border settlement of capital is changing, right? And custody and vaulting of gold is changing. What I view this story as is the UK, who has traditionally owned this market under the 400 years roughly of the British Empire, has owned that monopoly on the marginal pricing of gold. This reflects an effort to, essentially they're forced to pull their way or come along into this new world. And as we talk about, Cameron, you mentioned the hash part of Mindprint Hash. This tokenization is basically plugging in the kind of the hashing security of a monetary network that Bitcoin showed the way for, and trying to port that onto gold. And if you think about, gold itself used to be redeemable into a fixed number of units. Like our FX currencies were hard pegged, if you will. They had a nominal redeemable value in gold for cross-border transactions. If you think about it, what this step represents, everybody kind of following where the puck is going towards tokenizing gold. Is it going to actually work? That's a TBD, because you ultimately still have to trust your custodian, which, if you think about
the point of it.
that's kind of how we got into this problem in the first place. So if you're only relying on that, we're going to be back into a similar situation. Give it another 100 years or so, we'll all be gone, but our grandchildren and great grandchildren will be just dealing with the problem later. But the point here is, you can see this. We talked about Asheville, the gathering. There's clearly, we're working towards locking in some new rules for the coming monetary order. It's too valuable to trade with each other not to, in my opinion. So there will be something that ultimately emerges. But this story is kind of your tell that UK is now going to come along and try to see if we can pull off tokenizing gold, if that's going to work.
Yeah.
So interesting story there. We'll keep watching, but don't be surprised if 2 to 3 months down the road you're going to see an official regulatory ruling, something like that, coming from the FCA. All right. The next story on this front was from Russia. So if you remember, part of the aftermath in 2022, when Russia incurred into Ukraine and what do you call it? This situation went kinetic. Um, you saw the freeze out of Russia's reserves, primarily held in Euroclear, which you talked about before, and basically their sanctions applied on Russian companies, the sovereign government, all the above, um, basically blacklisting them from the Allied powers, post World War II financial system. Well, you're starting to see, it's kind of like the quote from Jurassic Park, right? Nature finds a way.
Yep.
This story here, Russia's hottest startup is a state-backed. I mean, this is what sanctions evasion network. That's like objective journalism, right? It's like, well, someone's sanction evasion is someone else just trying to build
Make
up
a payment. Yeah.
access. Yeah, exactly. Um, but this A7 is a state-backed payment network that moves money in and out of Russia, right? And notably, what it's using is a mix of cryptocurrency transactions and then more traditional banking methods. So if you think about this, it's really just a spin up. You see geopolitically connected. If you just tie the dots together, you see FTX or Binance. It's like, oh, you can see the interrelationships or maybe connections that look questionable. It's like, all right, trade wants to happen. Economies need to procure the resources they need from the rest of the world, and then they'll export those out and hopefully, generate profits, and everybody, raises their standard of living with a tide that lifts all boats. I think about like what's happening with the offshore dollar collapse, right? We're both moving backwards, and then these stories here about tokenized gold or A7 payment network. Even yes, it is sanctions evading, but what else do you expect them to do? These reflect efforts for like the grassroots for order to emerge out of chaos. So it's kind of clear. And then if you look at the next story, we'll shift focus to the U.S. Everybody's trying to find this like an agreement or new rules that we can cooperate under, and it's just not here yet. There's still a lot more to be resolved, and that's what I talked about at the beginning. Asheville representing hopefully the first of several meetings, and this could take a few years, could take several years to get to that endpoint where everybody's finally able to cooperate and agree. But for right now, everybody's just trying to save themselves, is kind of how I view it. All right, so you get to the US. This was last Friday after we recorded. John Thune announced that the Clarity Act vote would be delayed until at least mid-September. All right, so think about it. We've got a lot to resolve between now and then, mainly some development in the yen. We've got to get through Asheville. So if you're looking at this Clarity Act vote to literally provide regulatory clarity or guidance to allow these businesses, we'll talk about one in a second, to operate inside of the United States. Those rules are still written in pencil. It's basically we're going to govern by executive order or whoever's the head of an individual regulatory agency like the SEC or CFTC, et cetera. So it's basically any election for this growth industry, as everybody in the United States is trying to figure out what policy looks like, who is going to own these valuable new and emergent rails. I think what this John Thune story says is that back alley knife fight between like capital and power factions, it's still taking place. And that's where you go to the next story, this development this week. I think, this was actually July 31. We did not cover it beforehand, but New York Governor Kathy Hochul and Attorney General Letitia James opened a lawsuit against Kalshi, the prediction markets operator, for violating New York gambling laws. If this lawsuit is successful, like what they've asked for here is essentially like it'll
just
zero
it. Yeah.
Yeah, all of their profits, everything they've built up, the equity holders, it will be a full loss. Now, I think what Kalshi, Polymarket, we talked about them, like Polymarket especially, it's operating on stablecoin rails. What it's really moving towards is this pull of capital markets towards these new rails, right? Which are 24/7 blockchain settled. Ultimately, Bitcoin being a like the core part of that, in my opinion. I know that's opinion, and everything going on in Bitcoin the last week or two is creating a lot of uncertainty around it. But right now, still in general belief that those issues, developments will work themselves out. But anyway, don't want to go too deeply into Bitcoin here and get sidetracked. Um, Regardless, we have talked before about how the DTC, SEC, everybody is getting ready in the United States to shift towards like T+0 settlement.
Right.
24/7 trading is eventually where this is headed, and it has to go that way because that's just the way the market, that the technology, the innovation is going to pull the value. So winning that, like think about that as a sovereign operator, winning that sphere or owning the franchise on that new technology base is mission critical. It's winner take all. And so what you're seeing here with New York now and their politicians pushing back against really what is the federal government. It's the CFTC, and we'll get into that next item, or with our next headline. But now this is turned into, and in my reading of the situation here, my high level perspective, it's turned into a state versus federal kind of domain question. So immediately after this was earlier this week,
Yep.
the CFTC ordered Kalshi to keep operating under its emergency powers, and then it also added to that by stating its assertion that it has exclusive jurisdiction to regulate its registered entities, which here would be Kalshi, which is a interstate, you know, what you call it, financial platform is its argument. You're connecting on every fully collateralized contract, a long and a short. And those longs and shorts, some of them do come from inside New York's state boundaries, both individuals and businesses. But there's 49 other states, so this is a CFTC domain question. So we're at the point now where we're not just arguing between these different regional spheres, US, China, Europe, Russia. There's also very clearly like a power struggle, and like who's going to own what share of a very valuable pie over the coming decades. Um, so yeah, we've talked a lot on prior episodes about that digitization process of financial assets and capital markets. That's a one-way inevitable trend, and kind of our opinion, our mind print hash framework. Um, and this clarity hang up, like to leave it pending for another month and just leave it as an open item, that's not a steady state. Like it can't live there. There has to be some sort, like literally, there has to be some sort of clarity. Um, and there's going to be someone who has to budge here, and an agreement's going to get made, just because there's way too much uh, capital at stake and up for grabs. So similar to the yen situation, there's a whole lot riding on which way that chart breaks. You can see a similar kind of fractal going on with this fight over Kalshi, on top of like a lot of little proxy fights, if you really think about it, taking place as the more of those little proxy fights get resolved along the way, those are each little checkpoints on the path to the big game, or the big conclusion. Maybe 5 years from now, 10 years from now, who knows? Could be right around the corner, closer than we think, but towards some new monetary agreement, some framework that everybody can agree to and get behind.